Hey everybody, it's Sports Central's State of Soccer conversation. We got a huge summer of soccer just around the corner, and today here from Banc of California Stadium, we're going to discuss it both globally and locally. And pleased to be joined by two guys that have Southern California connections and have gone on to do great things in the world of soccer. First, my man here, Cobi Jones, three-time World Cup veteran, Mr. LA Galaxy, and by the way, a Westlake Warrior alumni.
Oh yeah, you're calling it out way back.
That's
I like
right.
that.
And on the other side right here, you know this guy. He is Fontana's prodigal son, Maurice Edu, three-time Scottish Premier League champion and obviously a former MLS Rookie of the Year back when he played with Toronto FC. Guys, it's about 2 weeks ago that the U.S. Under-23 Olympic team suffered that 2-1 loss against Honduras. I think it was a shock heard around all of North America. And now that's 3 straight cycles that the U.S. has failed to qualify for the Summer Games. The last time they did it, 2008, that was the team that you were on, Mo, so I'll start with you. I know you were part of the coverage leading up to it. Maybe just share some of the emotions that you went through when that final whistle blew.
I would say, of course, disappointment, frustration, a little bit of anger. But I think I was sad. I was sad for the players. I was sad for the fans. You know, we've had the pleasure of experiencing what the Olympics is like, what that can do, what that did for me from a career standpoint. That was a springboard that ultimately sealed my move to go to Europe. So I recognize it from that standpoint. And then just taking a step even further back, I was excited going into this tournament. I was excited of the prospect of what this team could look like when they did qualify, and the whole group was there together, whatever that looked like in terms of players being released. But what that group looked like going into the tournament, I was salivating at what that lineup could look like and them potentially actually getting a medal in that tournament. So I think that's kind of a part of where my frustration came from, the disappointment that I had in terms of them not qualifying yet again, us not maybe prioritizing, whatever excuses we can draw up.
Sure.
At the end of the day, they didn't get the job done. We fielded a strong enough team. Was it our best team? No, but we fielded a strong enough team to get the job done, and we didn't. And so it was definitely frustrating, but you know what? There are lessons to be learned from that for the players. There would have been some great lessons and great maturity that they could have experienced by going to the Olympics, but they're going to have to find another source to get that same level of maturity and experience. And you know, I still think there's a bright future for those players as well as this group of players as a whole.
We'll address some of that personnel in a moment, but I want to hop over to you, Cobi, and maybe rephrase it a little differently. You were on that 1992 Olympic team that went to the Barcelona Games, the first one in the line of 3 that went for the U.S. soccer program. So I feel like that kind of started that uphill trend of U.S. teams qualifying and seeing it going in the correct direction. Then all of a sudden, after those 3 Olympics in a row, it starts to fall off, leading to Mo's 2008 team being the only one that has qualified out of 4 of the last 5 cycles. How much shock is it when you see what direction it was going, and then all of a sudden now, over the last almost 15 years, it's gone in the opposite direction?
Well, it's definitely a shock as far as them not qualifying. And I would say, just as far as the general direction of it, it's not surprising because it's happened so many times in the past and we're not getting the job done. And as Mo has said, there's a variety of different reasons, you know, that we could point to. But when it comes down to it, it's those 18 and the coaching staff that need to make sure that they get the job done. Now, we could talk about the players on the field, which is a significant part of it. That staff is a significant part. But also, I think it's the relationships between the coaching staff, U.S. Soccer, and the various clubs and organizations around the globe to see if you can find a way, you know, at this time to make it where these players can come back and participate in Olympic qualifiers, because it is important. Because I believe it's a good stepping stone for these players to learn as a group what it takes to qualify, to go through that qualifying process, because it's not easy. And the big tournaments, they're always this qualifying process of making sure that you do what's necessary to win. It doesn't always have to be pretty. Sometimes you got to fight and grind through it, but you got to do what's necessary to win.
You guys both experienced that process, and when you talk about that process, I assume part of that reference is talking about playing in big, crucial games, getting that experience of having the target on your back, the pressure of trying to qualify for an Olympic tournament or trying to qualify for a World Cup tournament. So that begs the question then, Mo, what is the trickle-down effect? What is this going to do with regards to the senior national team? Because obviously qualification for the 2022 World Cup is just around the corner. Are you concerned about that? Because a lot of nations, as you guys know, use that youth movement and those younger players to be part of the senior team in years to follow.
Yeah, as much as I've expressed my frustration with them not qualifying, and as Cobi just attested to it there as well, I think there's a tremendous amount of upside in going to the Olympics, and especially, as I mentioned before, having this group of players that, for the most part, represent our full team. Our full team is basically a team of U23 players, U23 eligible players, so they could have comprised our Olympic team. I'm still very bullish on our team. The progress that we've made over the course of this year, when we've had our collective group together, I think them getting a continuous run of games, playing with each other. We've had some new faces introduced to the team, guys like Yunus Musa, who I think will be a huge asset for this group going forward. So I'm still, as much as I'm frustrated that they didn't qualify, I'm still very excited with our prospect of qualifying. But as Cobi said, qualifying is a tricky process, right? There's no way to really replicate that. I know some of these guys will be playing in Champions League, and that's a high level. But it's also somewhat different when you go on the road and you go to Honduras and you're playing on the road there, or you go to Trinidad, whatever that looks like, it's still a little bit different. So will some of the older guys who might have experienced that, guys like maybe a John Brooks, Pulisic, have to step up and take a little bit more leadership and say, hey, and drag some guys along? Yes. But will they be ready for that challenge? I'm confident they will be. And I'm confident what I've seen so far in the talent, of course, but I've seen a high level from a mentality standpoint as well, which is pleasing for me to see.
Cobi, for a guy, again, who did it at the Olympic level and then it translated to playing in 3 World Cups, do you share that similar perspective?
Yeah, I completely agree with Mo. They're very bullish on the national team and everything that group can do. I would say my concern is, and I don't want to speak for Mo, is that, look, these guys are playing in Champions League, so they know what these big games are like, but do they know what it's like as this group to go through a challenge together? That's going to be the big issue, because I think if you have like an Olympic team that's going through that process, they kind of know each other. Some of those players slowly move up to the next level. This group has to find a way to figure out those challenges of going to Honduras, of going to fields that aren't fantastic. You're not going to have a 2-hour bus ride or a quick chartered plane flight and sleep through the night. When you're going down to some of these Central American countries, there's parties outside, until like 2 a.m. Somehow the electricity goes off when it's like, 99 degrees at night. So these are some of the tricks of the trade of CONCACAF that people don't understand. And I would have liked to have seen this group, been able to experience that and take that on to the Olympics, and then, take that into the World Cup qualifiers as we go through to the next round, because these are all things that they're going to have to learn as a group together. I have no problem with them separately as individuals. They're fantastic. They're doing things that no other players have done before. But we all know it's the group effort that matters, at the right place, at the right time.
And just adding to what Cobi said there, that last part that he said, it's the group effort. The one thing that I've really enjoyed seeing from this group of players, and, I can say that my group experienced something similar. I'm sure, Cobi, you can say the same thing about your group, is a real cohesiveness, right? A real, maybe it's because of social media. We've had a chance to have a little deeper dive and see it a little bit more on display, but these guys seem to genuinely like each other. They seem to have a really strong relationship, not just on the pitch, but off the pitch as well. The guys that are in Europe having connections with each other there, and even the guys that are here domestically still finding a way to really ignite a strong bond. Some of them have grown up playing together, gone through the system, the youth teams, and now progressed into the full team. So that part of it excites me as well. And to Cobi's point of the different dynamics and the different challenges that are going to present themselves through qualifying, I'm hoping, and I'm confident that some of that cohesiveness and that closeness that they have as a group will help them get through some of those challenges.
All right, lastly, people at home that are taking this in here, are asking the question, all right, well, how do we fix it? Well, that's a whole nother show, right? So we don't have enough time or maybe even enough tape to come up with what exactly that is. But maybe each of you can point to something that you think is a good starting point, that you think is one key cog in the wheel that will really help get things going from an Olympic qualifying perspective, and even bringing the youth along to make sure that we take these guys through the system and gals through the system to have success at the senior national team level.
Well, for me, I'm going to go away from the players a little bit and just talk about, I think there needs to be a strong relationship between U.S. soccer, and the different clubs and organizations, around the world, and just constantly hammering them, hinting with the coaches, whatever, to try to get these players released with the understanding of how important the Olympics are for U.S. soccer. It's a very important tournament. It's a very, very important growth mechanism for players within the U.S. to go through to that next level. So for me, I would try to focus on that, leaving the player stuff behind, because everyone's got about five or six different, possibilities there, but that's one area that I would definitely hit.
And I hate to just piggyback off of that, but I think that's important, right? I think that for whatever reasons, it kind of, the impression that I've gotten watching these last few cycles is almost as if the Olympics doesn't matter. And that's crazy. I think it matters for so many different reasons. We've already touched on a few of them. To the casual fan who's not watching MLS every single weekend or watching soccer every single weekend, who tunes in just when the national team is playing, who tunes in when a major tournament comes around, such as the World Cup, such as the Olympics, who loves to celebrate the fact that they're American and just rally behind being American, this is a big opportunity missed. As we're trying to grow the game here and continue to get more kids inspired to want to pursue this as a career, to want to represent their country, this is missing. This is a big tournament that we haven't played in for the last 3 cycles. To be honest, we shouldn't call this team the Olympic team anymore. This is just the U23s, because they're not the Olympic team. And so I think we need to, if we're going to take this serious, which we need to make sure that we prioritize it from the top down, and we start to stress that importance and make sure that the players come into the tournament with that in the back of their mind. And I understand that it's a different time of the year and maybe they're not firing on all cylinders yet, but that for me is not a good enough excuse for why we're not able to go out there and, as Cobi said before, whether it's pretty, ugly, I don't care. I know with this new cycle of players, we're so infatuated sometimes with how it's done, the style, the flair, and all the X's and O's. But at the end of the day, in 4 years from now, no one's going to talk about how they would have done it. They're just going to talk about whether or not they did it. And so prioritizing the Olympics and making sure that we're not having this conversation, in 3 years is a big deal.
Sorry, I just want to say, it's always prettier when you win. It's always pretty. If it's 1-0, whatever, you win, it's always a little bit prettier.
Well, 2 things to wrap that up. Winning can certainly always be a cure-all. And number 2, in terms of priorities in your comments, Mo, let's remember 2024, the Summer Games will be in Paris, and 4 years later, they make their way here to Los Angeles in Southern California. And you very well could see games right here inside a Banc of California Stadium. So we start globally. Let's pull it back a little bit and go a little more locally. Obviously, it's the 26th season of Major League Soccer that begins here in April. The 5-time MLS Cup champions, probably a good place to start. The LA Galaxy enter as an MLS original. It's their 26th season in Major League Soccer. And then on the other side, you have LAFC in their 4th season in Major League Soccer. They've made some noise so far in their previous 3 years. We start with you, Mr. LA Galaxy, Cobi Jones. It hasn't been all a bed of roses over the course of the past 4 or 5 years for the 5-time champions. But some big changes, both in the roster, but probably most notably the impact of a new head coach in Greg Vanney, a guy you know very well. He's had success winning an MLS Cup with Toronto FC. How immediate do you expect that to make an impact for the Galaxy?
Immediately, without a doubt, because I think probably one of the most important things that's going on within the Galaxy is an attitude change. Just the mentality, within the organization, especially as far as what you see on the field, as far as the players and the staff and that relationship. Mo can tell you, that relationship between the staff and the players is the most important, because you want to be able to buy into what the coach is selling you. You want to have a relationship where you feel comfortable around the coach, and then all of a sudden that feels good. All the players start feeling good about one another, and there's that bond, that you're willing to work hard. I think some of the best teams that I've been on is when the players have bonded, not only amongst themselves, but have a little bit of a trust on what the coach is doing and have a relationship with the coach where they can talk to them directly. And I think Greg Vanney and his staff have done an amazing job there. And I know there's been a lot of talk about going to the past, that Vanney's been a part of it, Kalishman and Hartman is on the coaching staff, but it's more than that. Those players have had success. They've won MLS Cup. They know what they're doing, so they're good at what they do. And one thing that you have to remember about Greg Vanney, one of the big pluses is his organizational skills. And that's something that he's willing to put forward to organize and have everything set out so everyone on the field knows exactly where they stand and what they need to do.
I think, Mo, probably one of the big questions about Greg Vanney is, how will he implement his own system in the LA Galaxy? Because, to be fair, they've changed systems quite a bit over the last 3 or 4 years. It's also changed personnel. Will he have the right personnel to plug into what his system is, or do we have to take time to see how that's going to change maybe over the course of a year or two?
I'd love to be as optimistic as Cobi about the tide changing so quickly. I think it will take a little bit of time. I think that's natural. I think Cobi's right that there will be a reaction. Whenever I've had a new coach come in, there's automatically that fire, that spark, right? And sometimes it's longer served, sometimes it's temporary, but I think there will be a definite reaction. Greg Vanney has the kind of persona that, as Cobi was alluding to there, where you need to establish a real culture. There's been a lot of a negative trend around Galaxy the past few years. Sorry, Cobi, but
No apologies here. This is a roundtable, boys.
It's been and I think from the neutral fan standpoint as well, you want to see Galaxy getting back to their heights, right? You want to see a real rivalry between where the games have significance, not just because it's a rivalry game between LAFC and LA Galaxy, but also the significance in the table, right? You want to see those games deciding 1 and 2 as opposed to 1 and maybe playoffs, right? And so I'm excited to see change first and foremost. I think they dropped off so far that this year pretty much anything will be better than the last few years. But I think the change will happen over the course of the year. I don't know if it'll be immediate. I still think they need a few pieces. They brought in a couple that I think can help this team, but I still think they maybe are a couple pieces away from having significant change. But I do think that Greg Vanney is a guy who can definitely inspire this group, hopefully get Chicharito to be the guy that we all assumed he was going to be when he came to this team.
That's exactly where I wanted you to pick up, is what are the expectations for Javier Chicharito Hernandez? It was very clear he wasn't ready when he came in a year ago for this team. Injuries, on and off the field, it didn't seem to go very smoothly. What is expected from him here?
Well, a lot's expected of him, but let me go back because I got to take more. This is a grand subject here. Look, when I talk about the change with the Galaxy, I think it's going to be immediate as far as what Mo's saying is like the personality change. That's the important part. As far as what's on the field, yes, of course, that's going to take time because that has them meld together. And how they want to play and how they're going to have to play with a player like Chicharito is a little different than how they've played in the past. Chicharito is not a player that you give the ball at midfield and say, okay, take it, through 5 players and put it in the back of the net. No, you need a team that's able to hold on to the ball in the opponent's half, move it from side to side, pull defenses out of shape, and then boom, snap, quick move. Chicharito can be dangerous inside the box. That's what he's all about, and that's what I think Greg Vanney is bringing, the type of players that can do that. He's starting to bring in some wingers that have pace. He's bringing in some midfielders that can hold the ball and keep the possession. That's going to really help Chicharito as an individual player going forward. Now, to back Chicharito, I know he's gotten a lot of flack over the year. Let's remember when he came in, yes, he came in a little bit late. He wasn't in the best shape. He was coming into season. And what happened? Everyone has to remember this. What happened with season about a month in? We stopped. And we took a long break. So then Chicharito has all that time off. And as we know, practice is not the same as games. And you got to get in game shape. Then we come back, for a little bit. He starts playing again. Boom. Injury. And then he's out again. So for me, look, I'll criticize anyone with the best of them, but I think it is a little bit unfair to say that last year was what is a standard of what Chicharito is. I think he's a much better player than that. Now will be the telling year because he's had a full off season. He has a full preseason with this team to really get in with all the players, get a vibe with this new coach, and see if anything works together. Now, the expectations are still extremely high, for Chicharito. Will he reach that? We all hope so. I'm going to temper my expectations a little bit and just take it, let's take it a game at a time. How's that?
Yeah, well, obviously, while you both may disagree a little bit on where exactly the Galaxy is, one thing I think we will all three agree on is health will be a crucial factor for the LA Galaxy, not only with Chicharito, but obviously Jonathan Dos Santos. Right now, Sebastian Lletget might be playing the best soccer of his career right now, and you guys both mentioned some of the pieces that have come in that might help them solidify some things defensively. Let's move over to the guys that play here in this stadium. I'm talking about LAFC entering their 4th season in Major League Soccer. They've already won some hardware, right? They won the 2019 Supporters Shield crown right here inside Banc of California Stadium. But Mo, they've fallen flat each time that they've gotten into the MLS Cup playoffs. Will that be different this year?
I think it will be. I think it will be. To Cobi's point, when you look at last year, it's such a weird year, right? And a weird year for everybody. So I'm not using that as an excuse. I think LAFC struggled, of course, when they lost Atuesta. I think he's a huge part of this team. And, of course, when they lost Carlos Vela. So to have them both back, having Vela come back into a team now where I think he's going to be, not that he ever wasn't, but I think he's going to be even more inspired, even more motivated. He watched his teammate pick up the Golden Boot last year in Diego Rossi, so he's going to want that back. So I think he comes back into the team. That's going to be a big asset for them. I think Murillo on the back line will help this team as well. I think I'm more focused defensively. We know they can score goals. We know they can transition. We know their midfield 3, 4, whatever that looks like at times, dynamic, can break up plays, can start the attack, can even score goals. My focus on them is just, can they polish things up in the back line? Can they stop conceding silly goals off the set pieces? We talked about that numerous times last year. It became a theme for them. So I think Bob Bradley will emphasize that in preseason. It'll be nice for him to have a full preseason with this group. And as Cobi talked about, hopefully this is a year that's not going to have the kind of interruptions and the kind of ups and downs of last year. And if that goes well, they've added a couple pieces in the offseason I think will be influential as well. I'd look at this LAFC team to be motivated, to be hungry, not satisfied with Supporters Shield. MLS Cup is what they need to really still elevate them. They've earned, I think, the fan share of support here in LA. Sorry, Cobi. But I think that's what's going to really get them into that conversation of being, an elite team in this league. I think they've shown that they have the quality. They've put together a fantastic season where they won the Supporters Shield, set the record for points. But I think MLS Cup is still there waiting for them, and they need that as much as much as they're designed to get that.
Cobi, from a guy who has won an MLS Cup, multiple MLS Cups, what is the pressure on this LAFC team from your perspective, and the players and the organization at this point, just into their 4th year in Major League Soccer?
Pressure is massive. It's heavy. The pressure is heavy for these players and for the team. And when we look at this team being in this league, how many years did you say?
This is just their 4th season coming in.
4th season, right? This is the season, the 4th season, 5 seasons, and even I've had conversations with Bob Bradley, that usually it's about the 4th or 5th season where something has to happen or changes start occurring. And this is a team that has put money into players, has made the changes, bringing people in, that if things don't go right this year, they all know, especially the staff, they know that there will probably be changes in the next year. So this is really a lot of pressure, and it's heavy, on these players. And, I've been a part of situations like that where I know that it comes down that you got to make something happen or there's going to be changes. Now, look, they are a team, like Mo said, they can score goals at will. That is not a problem for this side. It is the defensive side, and that's where I think Bob Bradley's going to have his hands full, making sure that they can gel defensively. Because they're a team, they push numbers forward, but they never get back. And I think teams are starting, look, the 1st, 2nd year, 3rd year, people are like, whoa, this is great. But if you notice, slowly but surely, teams are starting to figure this out. Where to attack them. Seattle did a job on them that one year. This is something that they have to take into account. How do we still get the numbers forward, and dominate like we always do, but still build up our defensive side where we have a unit that is not going to break down. So that's the big question that I think every LAFC fan, every fan in Los Angeles is going to be watching to see how they play, and that will determine if they're going to be contenders for the title of MLS Cup or not.
You guys have both made mention to the LAFC head coach, Bob Bradley, and you both have either had an experience playing against one of his clubs or even playing under him. I'll stick with you here, Cobi. When you talk about Bob Bradley, what is it that makes him so unique? What is it that makes him, I always hear he's a player's coach. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, like he's a player's coach, but he's intense. He's like the intense guy that's always serious, always on, about the game, but he's always backing his players, and I think that's one thing that's great. And, I only had him, on the national team as an assistant coach. I played against him on some of his teams when he was with the Fire. So I've seen it from that perspective where he is 100% for the player and tries to do things that are necessary. I think sometimes he thinks he's a player, where he likes to get out there and join us sometimes, But
I see him doing his laps after training out there. Yes.
He's fit. He never stops running, never stops moving, that guy.
How about your experience, Mo?
Yeah, I think Kobe's right. His intensity is infectious in the team. I think he's also a coach who's very detail-oriented. He likes to dive deep into things. He loves the game. He studies the game religiously. Maybe to a fault sometimes, I don't know. But I think that's something that you definitely recognize, and it translates to you as a player. There are certain details, small details that you may not even recognize until they're pointed out to you that he'll pick up on quickly. You might come off the pitch and think like, wow, I just played an absolute blinder. Like it doesn't get better than that. Bob says, hey, come over here real quick. Let's watch this video clip. And you'll point out 4 or 5 small things that take your game from being here to now maybe there. And that small increment makes a huge difference, not only in your game, but in the collective. If every single player is increasing just by that small bit, that takes you from being Supporter Shield champion to now MLS Cup champion, right? And so I think he has that ability to recognize small deficiencies in players and help them to grow as players. You look at a guy like a Mark Anthony Kaye. When he came into this LAFC team, I didn't think he was going to be this player that we've been seeing the past few seasons. And I think he would attribute that a lot to what Bob Bradley has brought out of him. So I think when you see examples like that, it kind of just highlights what he can do to not only a team, but to individual players to elevate them within a team.
Yeah, Mark Anthony Kaye, great example, a guy who came from playing in the USL First Division and made his way, and now an MLS All-Star and a regular with the Canadian national team. All right, 25 seconds each to wrap things up here on our Summer of Soccer conversation. I'll start with you, Cobi. We start with the veteran. Which of these two teams this season in Major League Soccer, the Galaxy or LAFC, is under more pressure this season?
I would say LAFC is under more pressure this season because their expectations from everyone is like, when are you going to win MLS Cup? So that's where it is, between the two. For the Galaxy, it's a situation of, okay, can you get better? And as Mo alluded to earlier on, it wasn't very good in the past, so anything right now is getting better, but I do think that they're on the right track.
Yeah, sadly, that's the case. The bar has been set incredibly low for a team that shouldn't be the case for them. That's LA Galaxy. And so Kobe's right. I think there is more pressure on LAFC. LAFC has that target on their back by most teams within the league because they still play that attractive brand in soccer, and they're still one or two when you're talking about the top teams in this league. But they haven't won MLS Cup, and that's the goal. That's the pressure that's there for everyone involved, for the players, for the coaching staff, for the fans. That's the target. I think that's always been the target all along. Supporter Shield, as I said, is great. Having the most points, that's all great. But I think what everyone judges your success on within this league is MLS Cup, and they haven't done that yet. So I think there's more pressure on them.
Well, while we start, go ahead.
I want to ask.
Uh-oh.
Who wins the derby? Now, there's a different kind of pressure because every time LAFC is like, oh, the better team, but
yeah,
Galaxy
for those at home that don't know, when we're saying derby, we're talking about this inner city rivalry. The name is still up for discussion, right, according to some people on the LAFC side, sometimes referred to as El Tráfico. But hey, it always produces fireworks anytime we see it, doesn't it?
It does, and this is what I love. This is what I love about not only this rivalry, but just soccer in general, right?
Sure.
Because as Kobe just said, I think pretty much every single time that game has come around, LAFC has been the team that's in form, that's flying, and there's question marks about Galaxy a little bit up and down, and then the game comes and it goes one or two ways, right? Or obviously, and then a draw. But you're right, it always produces fireworks. It's always an entertaining game. Galaxy, they seem to just always elevate themselves, and they're up for that game. They recognize the importance of that game. I think for so many reasons, or one of the main reasons that maybe that stands out is because they're in a situation to where if they don't win that game, that just really catapults their season in a negative direction because they've been in such a rough patch for the last few years. Who wins the first derby? Look, like I said before, I'm excited about this LAFC team.
Don't waffle now. Don't waffle.
There's no waffling. I'm going to give you an explanation. I'm going to say the first game LAFC wins because I think that they're bringing back a strong core of players. They're bringing back a hungry and a motivated Carlos Vela. He's not going to tolerate that anymore. And this is going to be a welcome to the party for Greg Vanney.
Well, I would have to disagree with my friend
surprise,
here, my
surprise.
compatriot, you know, and I think the Galaxy are going to come through on this derby and win the totality of it too, all the games, because I think when this comes about, I think there's going to be some surprise players that LAFC has not recognized yet that will be able to bring this Galaxy team up to another level. And as we talked about, whenever this derby happens, all of a sudden, and I don't know why, you see players that were playing playing at another level, you know, and it's like they're playing in a World Cup final, you know. So I expect the Galaxy to come through with flying colors, and I think Greg Vanney and the staff are going to have them motivated and pumped up for the matches.
For what it's worth, they'll meet 3 times during the 2021 MLS regular season, twice out in Carson and once right here at Banc of California Stadium. Who knows, that could be the deciding factor. 2 home games for the Galaxy, 1 for LAFC. We'll have to wait and see. Great stuff here on our conversation, guys. Always appreciate you flexing some of the knowledge. I know the folks at home appreciate it too. We'll have to do it again soon.
Sounds good, man.
All right.
Appreciate you having us.
Awesome. Advantage Galaxy.